Hello, I'm Dr. Pierre Samaan, and it's wonderful being back with you as we continue in this series on unmasking addiction. Today we're in part 3 of the recovery and relapse prevention section of what we've been talking about. This is very important because there's so many people. It seems to be increasing, and as I mentioned before, that it's like an epidemic. It's like an epidemic. The addiction problem that's occurring throughout the world, but certainly we see it much more in America. And I think for whatever reasons, we can give all kinds of reasons why it's all going on, but the thing to focus on is it's going on. And what are we going to do about it? We have to take the action in helping one another. It's not about that person over there has a problem. It's about because that person over there has a problem, it's affecting you, it's affecting your family, it's affecting your children, your grandchildren, it's affecting your business, it's affecting your community, your state, your government. It's just ever growing, isn't it? So what are we going to do about it? We can't point the finger. That doesn't work. But we can reach out and grab hold, help somebody, help them come out of their addiction, help them get into recovery and stay in recovery. So unmasking recovery and relapse prevention, accepting the remedy for denial on the road to recovery. Proper recovery doesn't start without getting out of denial. Individual recognition of a need and a want is important. Do I want this? Do I actually need it? No, most of the time we don't need things. I never go to the grocery store before eating. I eat my meal before I go to the grocery store, because when I go to the grocery store and I'm hungry, I want all the groceries. I want to buy this or that, think, that would be good and all that. But when my stomach's full and I've had my lunch or I've had my dinner and I go to the grocery store, well, now I can control what I buy. I have more self-restraint, self-control, and that saves me money by the time I get to the cashier. So proper recovery from substance and behavioral addictions begin with an individual's recognition that they've hit a rock bottom. Addiction is the only disease that requires self-diagnosis. Think about that. Addiction is the only disease that requires self-diagnosis to be effective in treatment, even if others perceive it as addiction. It just doesn't work. You can have a doctor say, oh, you have an addiction problem, take this medicine. It doesn't work unless the individual agrees and says, yeah, I do have an addiction problem, I do want to get well, I'll take the medicine. Now, they have to self-diagnose first. I have an addiction problem, I need help, I want help, I've had enough. Give me what I need, I'll take it. It works then. And so many people will go into recovery programs, treatment programs, perhaps they're being court-ordered into programs, but they're still in denial. They're not going to recover. It's going to be a over and over again process. On average, the studies indicate around 9 times someone will go into recovery before, and that's average. Some is faster and others might take longer, and some never. But for the most part, on the average, about 9 times saying, I've hit a bottom, I've had enough, but it's a false bottom. So they go into recovery, and after however many months, they're back in the relapse mode again, until they hit that final bottom, whenever that might be. I've seen some terrible, awful addicts, just I can't imagine how $1,000 a day habits and so on, and gosh, all of a sudden they hit that final bottom, maybe the first time, and they stop. no withdrawal symptoms, no physical withdrawals. I mean, it's unheard of because they're supposed to have physical withdrawals, but I've experienced individuals that have gone through it that way and they never went back. And I've been doing this over 30 years, and so they keep contact with me, many of them. Many of my past clients are once in a while will let me know how they're doing and so on, and they're still doing great. Now that's a few. Majority, it's different. It's one relapse after another relapse or another issue after another issue, but each time they're getting a little bit better at it. And that's why we don't want to give up on them because they stopped and then they relapsed. Oh, well, that's it. You know, I'm not going to try anymore to help you. We don't want to help causing a type of, oh, that help's always there, so I can just call on it when I need it, and then I can just go back to doing what I want to do again. We don't want to be like that, but we do want to set boundaries, healthy boundaries, so that there is giving them a motivation to try a little harder the next time, do a little better the next time. There's no recovery when there's denial. In the previous video, we ended with speaking about biblical step number 1. We admitted that we were powerless over alcohol or addiction. Our lives were beyond our control. Step 1 tells us we must acknowledge our inability to heal ourselves and our need for a Savior. Well, what is denial? What's so big about that? That causes so many problems. The concept of denial is vital in the AA 12-step program, where not denying that substance or behavioral addiction is complex and forms a basis that is so important. We have to face it as soon as we can with as much force as we can. It takes up not only one step in the 12-step program, but it takes up the 4th step, the 5th, the 8th, and the 10th step. It's that important. Denial is fear-based. Despite the overwhelming evidence, claiming that something isn't true is a form of self-defense, self-protection, selfishness. And whenever there's self-protection, there's selfishness. You're thinking of self first. So despite the overwhelming evidence, it's fear-based, you know. It's not, I don't want, I don't need, it's, I'm afraid. And most people won't admit what they're afraid of. In fact, many of them don't even realize they're afraid until you kind of draw it out of them and identify what are those fears, where are they coming from. Most of those fears come from childhood. You can put a finger on those different things back there, some of them in adolescence and some of them in adulthood as well. And what do we say when we're in fear? This can't be happening to me. Fear and anxiety can be natural, like when a doctor declares you have a terminal illness. People who show symptoms of a severe disease sometimes deny or ignore those symptoms because the thought of a serious health problem causes fear, discomfort, anxiety. Periodically, I'll get someone who comes in for counseling, and they're dealing with having just been told they have a terminal illness and perhaps 6 months to live or a year to live. And the fear wells up. This can't be happening. I can't believe it. Why is God doing this to me? It's oftentimes we blame God for these things. Well, in addiction recovery, one thing that people tend to always say is, when they're in denial, I'm not the problem, you are. God is, the family is, the school teacher is, and whoever else. However, in substance and behavioral abuse or dependency, the denial defense mechanism is based on self-protection with a strong bias towards selfishness. They don't want to admit they have an addiction disorder and don't want to give up the pleasure of getting drunk and running away. You know, running away is a pleasure to some of them, escaping, even if it means they're likely to hurt themselves or someone else in that process. Basements can be dark and scary. Believing lies negatively expands imaginations, expanding the brain's fear circuitry. Fear is part of the limbic system, or what I often call, and you've heard me say it quite a bit in the past, the basement of the brain, where the limbic system is located. Your fight or flight center is located down there. Fear paralyzes the prefrontal cortex and what we've called the upper room of the brain, where the top half contains all the good stuff is up there, and your good thinking, detailed thinking, conscience, where the Bible talks about think on those things that are good, pure, holy, and so on. That's actually right behind the prefrontal cortex here, just behind there, where good thinking is located, and an enzyme gets produced when you turn that on, when it glows red in the MRIs or the SPECT scans. It's turning on an enzyme that produces white cells. White cells are your gray matter of the brain that are healthy, and they nutrify the brain, and they produce new brain cells and extend new pathways. All that's good. But the minute you stop that good thinking and you drop into the basement of the brain, that enzyme turns off, a new enzyme turns on that produces dark cells. Dark cells are harder, they really don't have any nutritional value in them, I believe, and they prevent neural pathways from extending, causing them to shrivel, and they kill off brain cells. The longer you're in the basement, I don't want to say the stupider you become, but the longer you're in the basement, your brain is shrinking. Your brain is not developing, it's not thriving, and so your judgment decreases over time the longer you're in addiction, whether it's lying or drinking or drugging. And what happens? I can't remember. What was I going to say? Gee, I don't remember that happening. You know, you ever get that from somebody in their addiction? There's phases they go through, but think of someone afraid of exams or public speaking. When frightened, they freeze, you know, and can't speak. I remember when I first started on the radio, I had about 13, 14, or 15 years, I had a live radio program it was an hour program, and we took questions and had a subject and took questions. And when I first started, I was scared to death. I thought, well, you know, what am I going to do? I don't want to flub up and all that. And my knees were knocking as I was sitting there starting off. We get that way when we're not used to something, especially if it's something we've never really done before. But you know what? As time goes by, you get better and better. You feel more relaxed. You become more fluent in your speaking. But when anxiety and fear continue, when you stay in the basement of the brain at fight or flight, what happens? Well, you can't think thoroughly. You can't speak fluently. Neither do those in denial. Fear-based anxiety freezes thinking. Poor judgment occurs. Problem-solving issues increase. The upper room, the prefrontal cortex, slows down because the energy, the metabolic flow, is going into the basement, down there where Nothing, not a whole lot good stuff is down there. We need the basement when we're threatened, when we've got to hit the brakes or whatever, quickly, but we don't want to stay down there. And when it's getting too much energy, thinking goes to sleep. It kind of gets tired out. It's yawning. It's saying, give me some juice. I need some juice up here. And then the basement is saying, I'm a giant. I'm powerful, I'm in control. Despite evidence to the contrary, the poor choices of believing lies strengthen the circuits of the limbic system. The poor choices of believing things that are not true because it feels better or there's something in it for me, selfishness, keeping me down there. Well, that's going to increase those that blood flow, electrical flow, metabolic flow. In doing so, we're breaking God's laws. It's not biblical. It's not the way we've been designed. So breaking God's laws repeatedly brings about disenfranchising from truths, from help, from the laws of God. Law of love, law of liberty, law of health, and all those other laws that are unchangeable. Those are all truths. God's not doing it to us. We're doing it to ourselves. But we blame God, or we blame our mom or our dad or our brother or sister or whoever else. So how do we resolve denial? Of course, those who care about healing the addictive client cannot force change by violating a God-given free will. Let's learn from the biblical description of the character of God, who is truth, love, and freedom. That's his character. He can't go against his character, against who he is. And we notice that whenever there's evidence presented in love, freedom brings about agreement or not, but when it's presented in love, I have a choice. I can choose to believe it to be true or not. I can choose to act on it or not. That's what love is. Change that is grown out of fear will not elicit love, but rebellion. It doesn't work. You can make people do what you want them to do, but they're going to rebel if you're making them do it. If you're bringing them into the basement, making them afraid not to do it, rebellion grows over time. Resistance increases and so on. God's truths are weapons against denial. For the Word of God is the living and active revelation of truth about God, His methods and principles, and the real basis of life in the universe. It is sharper than any two-edged sword. It penetrates the deepest recesses of the mind, separates thoughts and feelings, habits and motives. It also diagnoses the true intentions, attitudes, and principles of the heart. Nothing in all creation is hidden from God's sight. As He knows the true condition of our minds, everything is open and clearly seen by Him, who will one day examine and accurately diagnose us all. You can find that in Hebrews 4, verses 12 to 13, that talks about that intention of God being truth and love with the freedom of making our choices. That's a battle. So what it's telling us is there's battling going on, battling being fought with weapons, not weapons of actual swords or guns or tanks or whatever, weapons of truth and lies. If you think about it for a minute and you go way back to the book of Genesis, and you go even further back there where God created the angels and all things. What was that warfare that the Bible talks about in heaven? The war between God and Satan, between truth and lies. Did they use weapons? The Bible doesn't talk about weapons. It talks about truth and lies. I kind of imagine, hey, that was a warfare, a battle going on of words, of ideas, God's words and ideas against Satan's words and ideas of lies about God. And of course, he lost out and got kicked out. But what about us? He comes down to earth with lies and untruths, continuing the battling. How do you defend against that? Well, you have to defend against it with the truth. And what is the truth? Well, what goes up comes down. Those God's laws are truths that are undeniable. They keep repeating, and eventually they catch up and they reveal the lies. But truth can hurt. It's a weapon. It can be a weapon, so it can hurt. There's something special about God's truths. His truths are so revealing to our hearts and minds, they act like a burning fire to the soul. What method or gateway does God use to bring about this healing in addicts, in liars, in thieves, in whoever or whatever? What is the way to your heart and my heart? Truths or lies shape character. Which is better, a truth or a lie? If you're shaping your character, do you want your character to be shaped by truths or lies? And you have to identify, well, what is a truth and what is a lie? Your sound judgment is a combination of reason and conscience. This is how the truth enters our thoughts. And then we reflect and decide whether or not to form our beliefs. And our beliefs are character, values, attitudes, brain circuitry, and ultimately how we process and understand new facts and truths make up our beliefs. And our beliefs need to be in agreement with what is true. Otherwise, when the light is revealed, when truth is revealed, there's a problem, there's an opposition, there's a force, something doesn't feel right, something doesn't work right. Truth is going to eventually come out to overwhelm the lies, but then the prideful have to get stronger in the lies. Therefore, they're damaging their brains to the point that even when presented with the truth, they see it as a lie. And when presented with a lie, they see it as a truth. God's truths were like an illuminating fire radiating from the face of Moses. The Hebrews compelled Moses to cover his face, if you remember reading that in the Old Testament, because their consciences were guilty. I mean, why did they, oh no, that makes us uncomfortable, seeing the brightness in your face and all. Cover your face, cover your face. Because they didn't value God's methods and principles, because they preferred lies and selfishness. They were being exposed to truth, and it penetrated. It didn't feel good. The light of heavenly love and truth caused their minds to suffer with guilt and powerlessness. Try telling your teenage son or daughter a truth about something, and what do? They get all upset. Their brains haven't fully formed yet. They're still in that defensiveness and all that, and they're still working on learning how to believe, how to handle these different things. So they still can get very self-protective and selfish. They want things done now. They're entitled, so I'm entitled to have what I want when I want, and it's your fault because I'm not getting it. Or it's dad or mom's fault because you're no longer married, so if they were here, I would have what I need and what I want, even though you're the loving parent, you're the one sacrificing for them. They can't see that at the moment. They can only see what they're not getting, what they want. The lies is easier to receive than the truth at that age for many, not for all, thank God. The essence of God is like a cleansing fire. That cleansing fire is an illuminating fire of truth and love, and that's represented by Jesus Christ, completely overwhelming the hearts and minds of those without sorrow, those who are unchangeable. And the Bible tells us that means those who are unrepentant. You can never escape the truth. You can only delay the day you deal with it. I'm up there in years. I look back on all these things that have happened in my lifetime, the history and all that, and you can see how certain people, certain groups have lied to get what they wanted and so on. Eventually, however, truth catches up and exposes the lies, reveals it. And what happens? There's a great shaking that occurs at those times. There's a great need to distract from the truth that's hurting them and revealing whatever it's being revealed. And so other things happen that causes more problems, which continue on until that truth is revealed, and it just continues, isn't it? It's a cascading effect. Truth and love leaves no room for fear. On the path to successful addiction treatment, the immediate solution to denial is to remove fear, remove selfishness, remove sin, as the Bible would put it, from the heart and soul. Remember what I've said before, sin is anything that's going to hurt you. It's not we think of it as such a bad word. Oh, it's a truth, so I don't want to think that word. They've even taken it out of one of the, I think it's the Oxford Dictionary. They've taken the word sin out. Oh no. Why? Why does it bother them so much? So many other nasty words that they keep in the dictionary. Why did they take sin out? Oh, because it's revealing something that they don't want revealed. Recognizing truth evidenced by enduring change only happens when Jesus Christ is centered in you, in me, in all of us. We want to thwart denial. When people open their hearts to God, their interest in change and reconciliation increases. As the substance and behaviorally addicted client gains knowledge of God in the person's biblical recovery, they develop a strong desire to emulate the love of God, demonstrated throughout the earthly life of the Son of God. So Jesus Christ demonstrated God to us and helped us to get to know God. He was part God and part man, and that helped us to say, hey, I like that. That was good. That truth felt right. That truth worked. I want some of that. So we emulate it. We want to be like that. We become disciples of it or followers of it, just like any teacher teaches the students. The students want to be like the teacher, and they learn more. They mature more. They grow more. Don't be afraid to get help, because help works. At the same time, the addict becomes closer in love with God and with each other. As I draw closer to the light reveals more of the darkness in me, making me want to work harder to get rid of the darkness. so I can have more of that light, more of that truth, more of that peace that comes along with it. A Christ-centered, Bible-based, scientifically evidenced recovery helps clients grow in knowledge and spiritual awareness, manifesting mature spiritual fruition in unity and patience. Say yes to recovery. Coming out of denial to begin recovery begins with accepting your Savior, Jesus, making him the center of all life. The following only, let me say, when we're following him and his ways, his principles or methods, we form a deeper, closer relationship, a personal relationship. That's God's love. That's his law of love. How many marital clients do we get on a regular basis where one partner is saying about the other partner, oh, it's nothing personal, they're like robots, or they're this, or they're that. I need that closeness, or I need to be filled, I need that emptiness filled, and I'm not getting that sense. Well, the closer we get with God, the greater sense we feel his love, the greater we're filled with his love, and whatever all the other good things come along with it, the more it spills over onto those people we love and others around us. It works, but you got to push the button. Help me. Biblical step 2. And remember, I'm saying biblical step. Biblical step 2. Made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood him. We must know the truth about God. He is in the saving business. That's what he does, and not the condemning business. I remember when many years ago, a lot of treatment centers, they were in the condemning business. That was the way to recovery. You'd go into recovery and you would criticize. It was like going into basic training, and they would make it hard because you're soft and you're turning to this or that as an escape, and it didn't work. They were inducing fear, which induced rebellion, which created more relapses than anything, and recidivism was way too high. Then they started switching. They started changing. As spiritual 12-step became more prominent, they started recognizing, hey, we need to be more loving. We need to do it more like God, although they want it to be broad. They want it to be accepted by everyone, including those who don't want to believe in God. So they pick a higher power. They pick their flower or their tree or whatever they might want to believe in. But the reality is that spiritual awakening in recovery, I believe it's an 80% success rate over a 2-year period. So there's far less recidivism when it's been identified that that individual in recovery had a spiritual awakening, not just acknowledgement of the tree or the phone or whatever it might be. Now, I'm not making light of the higher power. We've got to start somewhere, and that's a start. If you can't believe in God, if you can't believe in the biblical step approach, okay, go that way, work on it, get better, do the best you can. Maybe you'll come around to recognizing truth as I'm talking about, and suddenly you start to see, hey, I'm having an easier time of this recovery now. Well, what does the Bible say about all this? There's so many scriptures in the Bible that's helpful, but here's one from Ephesians chapter 4, verse 27 and 28 in the Remedy Bible. The devil tempts us through our emotions. So don't give him, and remember the emotions, they're down there in the basement of the brain. The devil tempts us through our emotions, so don't give him any opportunity to confuse you or lead you astray. The person who has been stealing or in addictions has been practicing the methods of selfishness. And if they desire to get well, they must have selfish replaced. Selfishness needs to be replaced. How do I replace it? I got to come out of denial. I got to be a giver instead of a taker. When selfishness is replaced with love, they'll stop stealing or they'll stop their addiction and instead get a job or whatever it might be that'll be helpful in order to be able to give to others what they need. That's reaching out, isn't it? That's giving back. When you feel better, you feel like doing for others, don't you? I know when I get sick, if I have a bad cold or something like that, I don't feel like doing anything for anybody. I just want to pamper myself, and stay in bed or whatever. But when you're feeling better, okay, now, I'm thinking of what can I do for you? How can I help? And we're all the same. We're not any different in those ways. Well, I hope this was helpful for you in some way to understand denial and in recovery, getting out of that denial so you can maintain the recovery for longer. And we'll continue in this recovery topic next time. May your troubles be more minor, blessings more, and happiness come through your door. God bless.